Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tonight, I would like to talk about an issue that seems to come back again and again and again. Zimbabweans, with the knack of believing we are own masters, the masters of our own destiny. But whenever things are not going well, we always are the first one to look for scapegoats, somebody else to blame. Ben, I've heard people complaining about Sadc is not doing anything to help Zimbabwe. What's your view on this issue?
Good day to you and good day to everybody joining us. You know, I can't say, that Sadc has done nothing totally, but I am also of the view that, Sadc can do more, not only for Zimbabwe, but for the region. I would like to go and state that Sadc has got, guiding principles and guidelines. And those
Let's
are,
focus on Zimbabwe. What do you want? What do these people want Sadc to do?
for me, I expect, Sadc to call ZANU-PF to order. Why am I saying that? ZANU-PF, as is bombarding its own people. The suffering is there and it can be seen by everybody. Everybody within the SADC region knows that Zimbabwe is not in a good place, is not in a good state. But you find out that SADC leaders or statesmen that visit Zimbabwe, they always have a good word to say. Zimbabwe is moving forward. Zimbabwe is developing.
Well, that may well be true, but are we saying here that Sadc did not do anything in 2008, for instance?
No, I'm not saying they didn't do anything. We know they did something. But you cannot then say, we did that before and to hell with you. Or we did that before and that's it. That was enough. We're not going to do anything again.
No, one has got to understand what they did. In 2008 to 2000, after the 2008 rigged elections, Sadc are the ones who called Mugabe to order and refused to recognize those elections as democratic, and helped the setting up of the GNU. It was up to Zimbabweans ourselves to implement the democratic reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. We did nothing. What else did you want Sadc to do?
Yes, I agree with you there to say they did all that. But are we then saying that they should not do anything going forward? No.
Yeah. Let's get back to that point. You are a sovereign country. The regional body has come to your help and said, okay, you guys, you really need to implement reforms to stop this recurring problem of rigged elections. And you yourself had 5 years to do so. You failed to implement even one reform. What else did you want Sadc to do?
What I'm saying is, regardless of us not being able to do whatever we were supposed to do, right? I would like to say, it was a mistake on our behalf. we made a big blunder on that point, right? It is something that can be fixed. But what I'm saying is SADC can then not just, I mean, let's go back. SADC came out point blank and said that the past election did not meet the guidelines that was set by SADC, right? What then did they go on to do after that? They shelved their findings.
You're now going to 2023.
Yeah, we have to look at it as a whole package.
No,
We can't look at.
There is a point where we have got to accept responsibility. You are an adult as much as I am an adult. If I was to say to you, Benjamin, I advise you that you should not do A, B, C, D in this situation, I've got to accept that I can only advise you. I cannot force you to do something because you're an adult. But if you then refuse to accept my advice to you and you do the same thing that I advise you not to do, I'll be very furious if you were to come back to me and say, oh, why didn't you advise me? I did advise you. And you refused to accept the advice. What else did you want me to do?
Like I said, I do agree to say we had the golden opportunity and the SADC had set that up for us. But what I'm saying now is, as adults, even when I err, does that now necessarily mean that you're completely going to ignore me?
Benjamin,
you don't. We must get this right. We belong in SADC.
Yeah, okay.
We are part and parcel of SADC. If SADC has principles and guidelines that we, have to follow because we are part of that organization. Those are rules that are meant to be followed by each and every state that is within SADC. So if we are going to allow one member to break them willy-nilly, what does that then mean for the organization? We're looking at the organization itself now. Yes, Zimbabwe has erred.
Benjamin, you're failing to appreciate that SADC did something. Yes, I will be the first one to say, even before the 2008 elections, ZANU-PF had been rigging elections and SADC should have stepped in. They did not. And I'll be the first one to say that was a failing on the part of SADC. But in 2008, they did step in. They did create the opportunity for Zimbabwe to implement the democratic reforms to get out of this mess. We did not implement even one token reform. What I find so disappointing is that we have got leaders, MDC leaders, who never want to admit that they sold out during the GNU and are the first ones to blame SADC. I find that ridiculous. I'll be quite honest with you. You are refusing to accept responsibility here. As much as we are part of SADC, as much as SADC would like to help, at the end of the day, if both ZANU-PF and the opposition cooperate, connive to make sure that we don't implement even one token reform, what else did you want ZANU-PF, SADC to do? We cannot run away from that reality. And may I remind you that in 2013, when Zimbabwe was going to the elections, SADC called a special Sadc summit in Maputo in June 2013 and advised Morgan Tsvangirai to his face, if you go into these elections without reforms, ZANU-PF will rig those elections. Morgan Tsvangirai refused to listen. What else did you want Sadc to do?
In that regard, I want to state, I do appreciate what Sadc did for us to get to a GNU. I think that was a big step for us to ever realizing any democracy or taking any step towards moving to be a democratic country. Unfortunately, like you stated, our opposition that we entrusted to do the right thing, which is to implement the reforms, they failed to do so. That much we cannot take away from Sadc. I agree with you totally. Where I do not agree is that when you see wrong, despite you having spoken about it, wrong today is wrong tomorrow, is wrong the day after, and is wrong forever. And it must be spoken about, and it must be said as it is. ZANU-PF is doing wrong by its people. ZANU-PF is abusing its people. And that message will not change whether it happened in 2028, whether it happened in 2013, and whether it's happening now. It must be said.
So if you were Sadc, what would you have said in 2013, for instance?
I would have still said the same thing.
What?
The elections were not free and fair. They were. You don't say somewhat. They were not free and fair.
Yeah, but what end and purpose, Benjamin? Because you said that before months, a few months before the election.
This is where I'm saying a wrong today is a wrong tomorrow, is a wrong forever. There is no such thing as a somewhat. If ZANU-PF is rigging elections, as they knew Sadc, ZANU-PF would rig the 2013 elections, it would have been simple to say, we told you so, and still put the same label on the election, the same label that they used on the 2023 election. Nothing has changed. The violence was there. The forcing of people, in rural areas was there. The conditions have not changed.
I think you overestimate. Just as much as I gave you the parallel case of you are an adult, I am an adult. There are certain situations where you can give me advice. The underlying point there is advice. I am not obliged to take your advice. And in this particular case, Zimbabwe was given the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms which would have stopped ZANU-PF rigging the elections. When those reforms were not implemented, Sadc advised the people of Zimbabwe, because without doubt that summit was reported publicly. If you, the people of Zimbabwe, agreed with what Sadc said, why didn't you say something then? You said nothing. You participated actually in your millions. In other words, you were confident that the reforms were not necessary. That was your decision. And as a nation, we've got to learn to accept the consequences of a wrong decision. I believe the main problem we have with Zimbabweans here is that we always want to look for somebody else to blame and never want to take responsibility for what we did. Sadc advised Zimbabweans about elections, gave them the golden opportunity to implement reforms. And personally, I find it an outrage that the opposition leaders, the MDC leaders, Triple C leaders, have ever since the GNU blamed Sadc for why the GNU failed to implement even one reform, which is absolutely ridiculous. If I was Sadc and I'm being treated like that, why would I want to keep on giving the same advice, which is then ignored, and then somebody will turn around and say, "Oh, it's your fault"? No, I mean, if you know what you're doing is correct, go ahead. But you should also take responsibility when that fails.
Yeah, on that, I do agree with you, and I would like to point it out to say, it is unfortunate that we still have we had an incompetent opposition then, and we still have an incompetent opposition now, where they have lost their very essence, the reason why they are there in the first place, which is the movement for democratic change. That was what they were called. And that all amounted to reforms. And they have since, shelved that and taken up, a new direction to say we will win elections come what may. And that position has proved to be very futile. And it shows with 24 years of ZANU-PF rigging elections very successfully, if I may add. And obviously, us as Zimbabweans, we have not done ourselves a favor, because we fail to think and to see what is happening on the ground. That MDC, Triple C, and ZANU-PF are in bed together. They are working in cahoots. It's unfortunate. But I still remain to say a wrong today is a wrong tomorrow and is a wrong forever. And it must be said as it is. Sadc should be saying that every single time, even if it stands as a reminder. It is not for us. Advice is not for, like you said, advice is not for someone to take, but its advice is there to give regardless.
Well, for the record, Sadc condemned 2023 elections as flawed and illegal. And even after Sadc had condemned those elections, our friends in the opposition still went ahead and accepted their gravy-train seats, and even boasted that where they'd won the seats, those were liberated zones. What else did you want Sadc to do?
Like I said, it's very unfortunate that we entrusted our opposition friends, Chamisa and company, to do right by us. And this has proved that, they have nothing to do with the bid for democracy. Rather, they are there to line up their pockets. And they have said this, when they say that we cannot let go of our hard-earned seats in a rigged election. This is the problem that as Zimbabweans, we have failed to see as well. And I also take responsibility there to say that, that is an aspect that we have failed, to look and to grasp that this is exactly what is happening underneath our nose. Like I said, ZANU-PF and Triple C, and the opposition basically are in bed together.
Well, I'm glad you acknowledge that. If ZANU-PF and the opposition are in bed together, they are the ones who are therefore responsible for landing us into this mess. Sadc advised them, and if we, the people, fail to listen to what Sadc is saying and listen to what our ZANU-PF and the opposition are saying, then we are also responsible for it. I honestly do not believe that Sadc can do anything for a nation that is determined to continue doing the wrong thing out of greed. The quotation I'm showing at the bottom of the screen there is from David Coulthard's book, where he explains why he and his fellow MDC friends went on to participate in the 2013 elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, ZANU-PF will win the elections. Why some people choose to ignore that historic fact and look for a soft target, blaming Sadc, expecting Sadc to help sort our problem, beggars belief. That is what is holding back this nation. I think it is important that we remind ourselves what Sadc said about free, fair, and credible elections, and that it is our responsibility to make sure that we participate in an election process that is likely to deliver free, fair, and credible elections. To keep on participating in elections, knowing fully well that they're flawed, knowing fully well that ZANU-PF is rigging the elections, knowing fully well that by participating we're giving ZANU-PF legitimacy, is madness. And to blame Sadc for our own madness only makes the situation worse. Let me play the video clip and then you can give your closing remark, Ben.
Said to me, Mr. Vice President, go on behalf of Sadc, and all I expect from you is to help to give the Zimbabweans a free, fair, and credible election. Those are the only, he said it twice. I need nothing from you, Mr. Vice President, but free, fair, and credible election. You would have done your job. When I was in Zimbabwe, and we were on our way to go and see President Mnangagwa to pay a courtesy call on him, I contacted the president here, President Hakainde Hichilema. I said, Mr. President, we are going to see your colleague. Do you have a word for him? Any greeting, whatever? He said, no. The only thing you tell my colleague is that let's go ahead and give the Zimbabweans a free, fair, and credible election. He repeated the same words. So there was one.
That is the task. It is our responsibility to make sure that we've got free, fair, and credible elections. And to go in an election where you do not even have a verified voters roll is madness. And it is even worse when you have been told that you should not, and you ignore the advice. And then you turn around at the end of the day, you say, oh, Sadc is not doing enough for us. What do you want Sadc to do?
Yeah, I agree with you on the part that, as Zimbabweans, we have a big role to play, a bigger role to play, because basically, I would say, the decision at the end of the day rests upon us. If we continue to choose to participate in rigged elections, at the end of the day, it is now our burden to carry, and now we are living in that burden, actually. And I still say, Sadc can do more. Like I said before, a wrong today, a wrong tomorrow, a wrong forever will never change. And it should be pointed out regardless. So my final, thought is, as Zimbabweans, we have, a role to play, and we need to fix the mistakes that we are making, such that also help can also come our way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And those who were able to join us tonight, thank you again. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Same time, 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Good night.